Quo vadis Microsoft? Where are you going? I often asked myself this question, at least when it comes to gaming, until E3 2018. Also, it made no sense to me. 21st of May 2013. They had a rough start with their Xbox One reveal debacle and Sony's answer 3 weeks later at E3 2013.
For instance, PlayStation 4 won't impose any new restrictions on the use of PS4 gamers.
It was an absolute PR disaster, and this coming from the company that led the market of online console gaming and HD consoles for a very long time with the Xbox 360. Every idea of Microsoft for their new console seemed completely disconnected from what their audience wanted, plus the $100 extra for the Kinect, which was required at this time and made their console more expensive by that amount than Sony's PlayStation 4. They probably hoped that their audience would accept everything they do and made the first step to slowly get rid of physical sales. Sony countered this easily, and it was, in my opinion, also far too early for this on consoles. Of course, on PC, this is a totally different story. However, the idea of switching primarily to digital distribution is still there, even at the end of 2018, and it seems inevitable. There's even a rumor of a new version of the Xbox One with no disk drive coming 2019, and it starts to make sense at this point in time. If we look at physical sales from today's perspective, we see how digital sales have massively increased over the years, and for example, Microsoft is also pushing this a bit unnoticed in the background with their Play Anywhere program that only applies for digital purchases, but all that was still a bit different in 2013, even though digital distribution was on the rise at that time too. In addition, we had this always on and Kinect is always listening debate. Snowden's reveals of global surveillance in early June 2013 also didn't help too much to sell that idea. Like I said, a PR disaster. A few weeks later, around the 19th of June, Microsoft announced their big U-turn, which helped, but they would never fully recover or even come close to the success of the PlayStation 4, at least at the time this video was made, and I don't see this changing anytime soon. But all these bad decisions were not the only problems of Microsoft. Another one was games, exclusive AAA games that sell systems to be precise. I would argue that this generation was relatively weak AAA exclusive wise when I compare that to the older generations like the Super Nintendo, PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 era, but Sony at least tried this time and released several high quality games over the last couple of years. Still, if you look at its first year, also Sony struggled. The PlayStation 4 was released at the end of 2013, so we had Killzone Shadowfall, Infamous Second Son, Infamous First Light and maybe the remaster of The Last of Us in 2014, which was already on PlayStation 3 but still sold quite well. Even Bloodborne, one of my favorite games, released 1.5 years later in 2015. The really big games were quite late. Uncharted 4 released May 2016, so 2.5 years later, and for example, God of War just came out this year, far over 4 years into the PlayStation 4's life cycle. But let's see what's going on Microsoft's system seller front up to this point, and those titles are of course also on PC. We got a new Forza every year, which is actually impressive. In October 2015, Halo 5 was released, and in 2016, Gears of War 4. In addition, my beloved Sea of Thieves by Rare came out 2018. Honorable mentions: Quantum Break, Killer Instinct, maybe Cuphead, and Ori and the Blind Forest. That were the biggest releases for Microsoft I can think of, minus some titles like State of Decay 2 and Halo Wars 2. So the later years brought some good titles, but the first 2 years of both consoles were not that amazing, to be honest. Let's bring our minds back to the early 90s and compare that to the first 2 years of the Super Nintendo, and I use the Japanese release date, which excludes 1993, so it does not become too ugly. Just imagine you are in 1992 and hear this list: F-Zero, Super Mario Kart, Final Fantasy 4 and 5, Sadly, I can't include Final Fantasy VI, which was known as Final Fantasy III in the US, Super Mario World, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Street Fighter II, not counting the arcade edition which came first, Contra 3, also known as Super Protector in Europe, Super Castlevania 4, Turtles in Time, one of my favorite games of all time to this day, and some more. And this were only the first 2 years. Let's not talk about what will be added to this list until 1995. Well, over 20 years later, the exclusives list of the 8th console generation doesn't look that impressive anymore. There are for sure many reasons for this, as modern AAA games have often far more content and the development of high-fidelity graphics and animations requires very large teams to reduce the development time to a reasonable level. Zelda: A Link to the Past was developed with around 25 people. AAA games these days have teams 10 times the size of that and more. Still, you would think that Microsoft, after falling behind, invests heavily in game development, producing these killer applications, but somehow that's not what happened. And of course, there are most likely reasons for this in the background we often don't know the details about, but look at it from the perspective of the Xbox One. Sales numbers are far behind your competition. It's not even close. The list of system seller games released and in production is quite short, and your competitor announces not only games with very strong brands, but also impressive looking new IPs in very popular genres like Horizon Zero Dawn. In contrast, at Microsoft, 2014 they shut down the Xbox Entertainment Studios. They should make TV series of their big game franchises, fueling their vision of the Xbox One as an entertainment system. 2016, Lionhead Studios gets closed, resulting in Fable Legends cancellation. And Remedy Entertainment announces that they won't make exclusives for Microsoft anymore after Quantum Break. 2017, Platinum Games' Xbox One exclusive Scalebound is cancelled too. In addition, some games got delayed, like Crackdown 3, which is still not out, but at least got a new release date at the Game Awards and will most likely come February next year. Looking at the number of big AAA game studios shows Microsoft is a bit lacking, so what's their plan as one of the biggest gaming companies on this planet? There was a time when it almost looked like they are leaving the console market completely. Nothing made sense and they allowed Sony to have the field. However, the next step was announcing the Xbox One X, marketed as the most powerful game console ever, and pushing for high performance or playing games at 4K resolution. Sony did something similar with the PlayStation 4 Pro, even though less powerful. In an interview, they also expressed that the classical console generations could vanish at some point, and that is basically what they are doing with those more powerful console versions inside a generation, I guess. If I had made this video before E3 2018, I would probably end the video here and come to the conclusion that Microsoft has no interest in developing new exclusive games anymore, and that they are even not well prepared for next generation if they should decide to produce a new console. Maybe they will focus on PC gaming, which they neglected for more than a decade. Their focus on letting people play digitally purchased games on PC and Xbox One with their Play Anywhere program, connecting it to their Xbox Game Pass, gives this impression, especially when you consider that this program does not apply for physical sales. So I assume for Microsoft it doesn't matter where you play, as long as you play it on a Microsoft operating system, while cunningly and a bit hidden pushing digital sales and games as a service in parallel, which they can control on their own platform and they don't need to share the revenue. But around 2017 and 2018, something interesting changes at Microsoft in the background. Phil Spencer is promoted to Executive Vice President of Gaming, which was before that promotion handled differently. Of course, he was head of Xbox and Microsoft Studios before, but had to report to Terry Myerson, the Executive Vice President of the Windows and Devices section of Microsoft. In Microsoft's internal restructuring, this section got split up. Terry Myerson left the company, and Phil Spencer now reports directly to Microsoft's CEO as Vice President of Gaming. And it seems that Microsoft's gaming section is slowly changing its strategy from almost nothing to actually doing something. It's hard to imagine that Microsoft simply gave up after their PR disaster and sits out this generation. They still made the Xbox One X, and the next console generation is probably at least 1.5 years away, most likely longer. Also, Nintendo is doing fine with the Switch, so there's much competition on the market. But then, at E3 2018, Phil Spencer announces that they just bought 4 new game studios and formed a new one called The Initiative. 2 of them have worked on Microsoft exclusives before. It's weird, but why did this move take them so long? Was it to cut some costs or wait for the right moment? Did restructuring put everything on hold? We will probably never know. Then in November 2018, Obsidian and inXile Entertainment are acquired too. According to an interview with inXile's Brian Fargo, Microsoft approached them in April 2018, so it can be assumed that the negotiations were not that long ago for the others too. Within a year, Microsoft got 7 new game studios, which is crazy, and one of the titles Obsidian is working on right now, announced at the Game Awards, called The Outer Worlds, isn't even an exclusive. It's still from a deal with a company called Private Division, which is a subsidiary of Take-Two, existing to fund interesting indie game projects. So this won't be an exclusive, and shows that this deal wasn't planned years ago either. If we look back at the beginning of Xbox One's life cycle, we see a strong contrast. Microsoft was not able to deliver as many strong IPs, old and new, as Sony did. For example, Fable is missing, or strong new IPs in general. But it seems Microsoft wants to change this in the future, but this coming back to their senses seems quite late. It's the end of Xbox One's life cycle, and we know that at least Obsidian works on another title in parallel. Could be big and now a Microsoft exclusive. However, all these new studios were acquired this year, and they most likely had something in the works, like Playground Games, who made the Forza Horizon titles. Their new project is not a racing game, but open world. Still, I would not expect them or the other studios to deliver games anytime soon, which makes it likely that the acquisition could be in preparation for the next console generation. Some assume 2020 as possible year for it, and 2 to 3 years development time could fit into this quite well. With this, Microsoft could be able to have something for their new console launch and for the transition period from this generation to the next. It seems Microsoft is back on track, but retrospectively, their old course still seems to lead nowhere. Why not acquire new studios earlier? What were they trying to do? Why is, in a strong PC era, Microsoft's store on PC still absolute trash for years, when about 96% of PC gamers use a Microsoft operating system? My mind can't even comprehend the last point. Sometimes the ways of Microsoft make no sense at all, but I'm curious what games we will see and how the next console generation will look. Will Microsoft recover from this rough generation? I think so. Also, will they care a bit more about PC? I don't know. With the just released Epic Games Store, new competition has arrived on the PC market, and it will become more and more difficult for Microsoft to establish a strong online store that can compete with Steam and alike. But at least the first steps for the next generation are made. Pushing back the distribution of physical copies will be most likely a topic again, but this time things have changed. Thank you for watching. I wanted to make this video for a very long time, and originally before or after E3. The path of Microsoft was always a bit strange, and it seems Phil Spencer has initiated some changes in Microsoft's gaming division. Having strong competition benefits the consumer. So I'm glad that at least Nintendo is doing well. Of course, if all 3 big console companies do well, it's even better. I'm also behind schedule and December is a busy month, but I will most likely make a lore-related video next. As always, if you are still listening and like this video, consider pressing the like button or even subscribe. Don't forget about this nonsensical yet important bell feature. I also read and answer almost all comments, so feel free to post. New questions for my Answering Lord of the Rings lore questions format are always appreciated. I would also like to read some opinions about Microsoft and their strategy of this generation. Do you see more sense in it than I? What do you think about digital distribution? Again, thank you for watching and goodbye.